As I was saying, our speaker is Zach Robertson from Yamaguchi University. And Zach is going to be giving us a talk about peer feedback training through mobile technology. So without further ado, it's over to you, Zach.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for dropping in. This is a presentation about peer feedback training using a mobile technology called Pear Deck. So let's go ahead and get it started. I'm going to be going very quickly today, but I am going to offer the slides available for download in the chat after we're done. So if you feel like I'm moving really fast, just remember you can just download them and look at them later. All right. I'm going to first talk a little bit about peer feedback, just to give everybody some grounding as to the kind of things I'm going to talk about today. Then I'll talk a little bit about the application itself, introduce some of the features and how it functions, especially for those of you who have actually never seen the application before or used it. Hopefully after that, you'll know kind of how it's useful. And then we're going to look at the peer feedback training procedure itself that I've used in my classes. Hopefully you'll find something that you might be able to use in your own classes through that. And at the end, with whatever time we have left, I'll show the resources that I've used to research this and also answer any questions if there's enough time for it. So let's just go ahead and start. I got into this because I would often do peer feedback, peer review in my classes, and I just kept on running into this wall where it just wasn't going as good as I thought it should. Even for students that seemed to be very capable, they would struggle a lot with this. Either they didn't know what to do or they weren't motivated to do it. And so I just kept on thinking, how can I turn this activity into something more useful, and so that it doesn't become just kind of a write-off or a filler activity that you throw in at the end of a class just to kind of fill the time. So I'm just going to start talking about peer feedback itself first. We use the word peer feedback, and it's kind of encapsulates a lot of different terms. You can generally divide them into two parts. There's the summative type of peer feedback, which is often referred to as peer evaluation and peer review. And this focuses more on a strict pass-fail or giving some kind of grade or rating. The other side of it, we can look at it as more formative. This is often referred to as peer coaching, peer assessment. And for the purposes of today, and also for my classes, I like to try to keep things on the formative side, meaning I want this activity to be focused on improvement, not just giving grades. This is useful both for the students who receive the feedback, but it's also even more useful for the students who are making the feedback. And so today, I'd like to try to keep things over on this side of the peer feedback ideology spectrum, I guess you could say. So when we think about peer feedback, it's useful to divide the activity and up between the idea of assessor and assessee. So the assessor being the student who is providing the feedback, the assessee who is the one who is receiving it. And for peer feedback training, we're really focusing on the assessor side. And the reason for this is that the activity itself can be very useful for the assessor from an idea of the self-regulated learning, so metacognition. The student has to be able to understand the learning process, understand the target learning, deconstruct it in order to be able to provide adequate feedback for their partner. And so by helping them do this, you help them in the overall learning as well. We can look at this from an individual perspective. It's kind of a Piagetian constructivist approach. The student not only needs to be able to absorb this information, but they need to be able to create some type of artifact that they put out into the world again. And in this situation, it's the feedback itself. They have to kind of assimilate what they've learned about this activity that they're doing, put it together in an intelligible way so that somebody else can make sense of it. And so through this process, the student internalizes the things we're trying to teach them and essentially learns it better. And the one more aspect you can think about is the social aspect as well. So this has to do with the idea of role model theory. People, when they do something just by themselves, for example, if it's just self-reflection, students may not engage in it so much or take it so seriously because, again, it's just about themselves. But when you put them in this assessor-assessee situation, the student has to sort of, they have an obligation, I guess you could say, towards that partner of theirs, and they want to do their best on it. We all humans, we have this sort of built-in desire to work with other people, to help other people, to please other people. And we can use this, and that's what the peer feedback can be useful for. And so it kind of motivates the students to engage the activity at a higher level. So you take all of these into account, the activity can be very useful. Let me get up here real quick. Okay, so however, there's a lot of things we have to think about. We can't just jump into this peer review without considering the context. Are we in Zoom? Are we in a classroom, right? And the students themselves might have other more just immediate concerns on their mind. It could be something like the weather. It could be another test they're taking. The content you're teaching in your class, right? So are we talking about academic writing? Are we talking about a business English class? Are we talking about just a typical English conversation class, right? The medium, is this going to be done face-to-face? Is it going to be done on Zoom? Is this going to be done on some sort of online forum, like maybe Moodle, right? Google Classrooms. The learners, what's the proficiency level? Is there sort of a gap in proficiencies between the students? Lower proficiency students might need to do this in their native language to avoid this from becoming too superficial or limited. And then also other things such as this is an all male class, all female class, age group. There's so many different things that go into account there. And then also you as the teacher, to what degree do you think this sort of aligns with your teaching approach and ideology? All of these things, I'm showing you my examples today just from what I've done. So just bear in mind that you're going to have to adapt all this, of course, to what you're doing at your situation as well to get the most out of it. The one final thing we need to think about with the peer feedback training is where this is actually happening in the lesson flow, because there's plenty of places you could put it in. You could do it at the beginning of the course, essentially, before you do anything, if it's something you feel like is very important and you're going to be doing a lot. You could do it along with the activity instruction itself, though this could overload the students, particularly if it's their first time doing it. You could do it right after the activity finishes, before you do the feedback. You could do it right after they do the feedback just to let them reflect on it. Or you could do what I do and let them run the whole activity one time and then by themselves, including the peer review. And then you do the instruction again before you do the activity a subsequential time, so that they can kind of compare what they were doing before with what they're doing after, right? So this is all going to depend on, the course that you're teaching or the situation you're in. If you're doing an activity just once or twice in the semester, maybe you need to just go ahead and do this at the beginning to get the maximum effect. I happen to do 5 essays over a semester, and so I have the opportunity to do one full round before doing the peer feedback instruction. So I find that for me tends to be the most useful. So you'll have to consider the timing of when you put this in to get the most use out of it. And a little trial and error also is definitely maybe going to be necessary. So I'd like to really quickly just though look at Pear Deck as an application, just because I think it's very useful, not only for this, but just in general. We often as teachers find ourselves sort of competing with our students' phones essentially for their attention and their motivation. And this I found is one way to, instead of fighting it, to kind of just harness it and use it. Because again, these phones are designed to steal people's attentions. So you're up against some pretty serious technology. So why not make it your friend, right? But the Pear Deck is good because it's free. It has compatibility with PowerPoint, Google Slides, and maybe even some other software. It does have some LMS integration, although I don't really use it to that depth. The real key for it, and that's what we're going to see in a second, is the instantaneous response. Unlike things like Google Forms, you don't have to have the students all submit, and there's real-time updating when students make changes to their answers. And this really draws people's attention, and it has some useful effects that I find make it better than a lot of other options out there. And it's very easy to use too. You don't have to know how to code. You don't have to have any sort of experience with web development or anything like that to make use of it. So that's why I like it. Now, we're going to just quickly try to demonstrate some of the functionality. And to do that, I know we do have some people who have joined, but what you can do is, actually, let me move on to the next slide. We can join this presentation right now, and we can just together kind of look at how this functionality works. I'd like to maybe just take a few minutes. We have some people on, but you can go to this URL down here, joinpd.com, or you could hit the QR code and you just type in this little code here and it will automatically connect you. You do need a Google account. So if you're on an iPhone and don't have one, don't worry about it today. It's not that important. But if maybe we got a few people here, we could connect to the presentation. You can either do this in your smartphone or you could just open up another window and whatever your internet client happens to be, and you can connect to the presentation. Oh, wait, maybe just a few more seconds. So I don't want to take too long. So if anybody else wants to join in, we do have some people who are in. It could be useful, and it'll also help you see what it looks like from your students' side as well when you log in like this. So I will wait just for a few more minutes. They do need a Google account, yeah, app. Yes, they do. So this is something that you, again, if students need to share a phone, or if I've had one school where they pass out tablets. So we've got some people coming in. That's good. I'll wait just maybe a few more minutes. Oh, sorry. And so the QR, the joining code is always up here at the top, although it should be visible. Sorry about that. You can also access it through the URL that's down here too. And it's just, you'll notice that you don't need to download an app. You don't need to install anything. It just runs off of the internet client. So that does make it very nice. The students don't have to sign up for anything. If they're on a smartphone, they already have a Google account. Okay, so I had that open just so I can see how many people were on. But let's go ahead and we'll just start. And if you want to keep, you could join in after if you want to. So the first thing I'd like to ask is, where do you primarily teach? And this is a multiple choice question, so you can just choose an option. This is one of the first types of questions that I will be looking at when I show you the activity itself. And so what you'll notice, hold on real quick, this is there. You can show the responses, and we've got a lot of people here who are at the university. You can answer the question by touching the answer button down at the bottom right on your phone or on your device. Okay, and so you can see here we're getting automatic updating now. So we got a lot of people in the university here. So obviously we'll all be able to use, because the students will have their phones with them when they come to class. Now what you should try to do just for fun is just click another answer really quickly. You'll notice that you'll get updating right away on the slide. So the cool thing is the students all see everything happening. And you'll notice that when you put an answer, some student will put the wrong answer up there, but then they'll discreetly change their answer to align with everybody else. That's also fun to watch people do that. So this is one way you can, one style of question that the application offers. And you get real-time feedback here. So you can see what the students are thinking and what they're doing. All right, let's continue. Show you another type of question. So how many years have you taught in Japan? This is a new number question. We'll actually be using this a lot in the activity, but let's just see what everyone, if you haven't taught in Japan, if you're in another country, put 0. And so you'll see that people's numbers are going to start coming up here. Let me see, I'll put mine in as well. Okay, so we see a nice spread here. So what the good thing is, this allows us to see the different values that people are putting up on the screen. All right, so this is another thing we're going to be looking at later, but this is just a way we can get a whole bunch of different input from everybody in the class. So we've got a lot of people here who have been teaching for quite a lot. I personally have been here for 16 years teaching. Okay, so I guess I'm getting up there, but there's people who have been here for like 30 years. I don't consider myself an old timer yet. Okay, so that's good. Let's move on to our final question. So this one here is an open-ended question. So this is a free one where you type in your answer. So this is another type of useful format that we'll be using. Let's see, we already know what I do. Now I'm going to put this up. I'm going to put this here because the interesting thing is that you're going to see people writing right as they go. Okay, so we got Saitama, Gifu, Osaka, Shimonoseki, Yamaguchi. Shimonoseki, hey, you're right near me. Okinawa, okay. So we have a lot of people. So you can see here now, you can change your answers too. That's what's so nice. You can delete it, you can add new things. And as a teacher, I can just keep scrolling through it. I can people can delete if they want to, right? So this is a good way to collect brainstorming from a class really quickly, right? And so this is also going to prove to be useful when we do our training method. So let's move on with it. So let's actually look at the procedure itself. So I use a modified approach. I took part of it from a research paper by a man named Min, and I'll show that later. He advocates a 4-step approach, but I've also found that a priming activity is very useful too. So I'm going to show that first, just to get the students on board with what really peer assessment and peer review actually is. When we first encounter students in this activity, often they don't really even understand what the concepts behind feedback really are. And they need some instruction, some clear instruction to sort of point them in the right direction. And we want to address 3 questions. What kind of feedback is the most useful for their partner? Where should they be looking in their partner's work to give feedback? And then what kind of aspects should they be focusing on? And they really need some concrete instruction here. Even the best students, even high-level university students, their metacognition is still in the process of development. And so they need to be pointed at these things. We as teachers often take for granted that we do this for a living, but people who have never done this before, you'll find that they don't have any idea what to do. So I will start by asking them this kind of question. And you'll notice on your Pear Deck, right, you can see the kind of options I'd be giving them here. You're just saying, okay, so what would be good feedback? And I'm giving them a very simple example. I'm just, so they can see really clearly kind of, okay, like I see that this one's probably right. And all of you who are, if you're looking at the options right now, it'll be very clear to you, like which option is the better one. But maybe they don't know why that's the case. Right. So I'll tell them, well, we want to be making this again as formative as possible. We're looking to improve. So things that are just simply opinions or praise, or again, this summative type of scoring is not as useful for the peer feedback. So by doing this at the very beginning and making this simple for the students to catch, you'll automatically be avoiding a lot of the problems that happen when we do peer review in a classroom. Okay, and so this is the first thing, and it's very simple. It's just very clear. They see, okay, this is kind of what we're doing now. The next thing I'll ask them is, again, and this is a Zoom example, by the way, just because I didn't actually do this over Pear Deck this last semester because it's not really, it doesn't really work well with Zoom, but you could just put the questions onto the side, for example, and have the students just, tick their answer that they like using the comment function. But again, I give them some choices here, and the students, this one's a harder one. They have to think a little more about it because not all of them are so obvious now. And so again, this one is the one that's the least helpful. And the idea is that focusing on where the other person is the weakest is going to help them the most. Students will have a tendency to want to please the other person or at least just get along with them. And they're not going to want to focus on things that might cause some tension and stress. But if you can put this out in the class at the very beginning and say, look, you're not being mean when you focus on something somebody's not doing well, you're trying to help them. So it's very useful to do this type of question. And again, I have a pretty high level group of students that I work with. You might need to tone this down a little bit depending on your learners' English proficiency. You may even need to do this in the native language if you can get some help with one of the other teachers. I'll have to leave that up to you, but something that the students can sort of internalize and understand easily is good. It'll save you a lot of trouble later on in the activity. And then right here, what does the student need to improve? Now this is, I use the open-ended question here, you'll notice. And the reason why I do this is because a lot of times students come into this activity with very constrained notions of what feedback needs to be about. Often they'll focus on grammar, they might focus on vocabulary, and this is simply because this is where they've been tested on, and this is where they've been taught that this is what equals competence. And this is actually not a very good thing because students often, particularly the average Japanese student, their language competence isn't high enough for them to be giving what I'd call real feedback on somebody's grammar per se. And if students don't have competence, they're not going to have the confidence to want to really do this activity. So I like to let this be an opportunity for them to see that not only there's not just competence we're talking about here, there's parts of the actual activity itself. So if this is academic writing, I might have them, okay, but you could talk about the balance of the essay. Did they talk about something too much? Structure, the things that we've been taught in class, is there logical structure to it? Are they following the things that they've been learning, right? Relevance, is their answer really addressing the question they've been asked to do for the activity? Clarity, is it as understandable as it could be? All of these things don't really involve their linguistic competence. This is very important. Students have to feel confident that the advice they're giving actually makes sense, or they're not going to want to do it. So being able to get them to see that what they need to be focusing on may not be just linguistic competence itself. So let me just keep going here. So then Min talks about 4 steps for making good advice, and he calls it clarifying, identifying, explaining, and offering. And I'm just going to show you how I go through this with the students. We basically start at step 1, and I will show them examples of student, not only the student activities writing, but also the example comments that other students have made before. So for step 1, the students will look at this example writing, and they will look at a comment some assessor has given before in the class, and they are going to rate this using the rating function. Okay, and I would say 1 to 10 just to constrain them a bit. And the reason why I use this is I want this to be simple, and also they might look at this and realize it's not so great, but maybe they can't articulate exactly why it's wrong, but that's okay. What I want them just to focus on is just see if they can get a general sense of what quality of feedback this actually is. And again, we're talking about clarifying, right? So it's very important that you give them some kind of example and explanation of why this feedback from before wasn't so great. Maybe show them what they could have done better. And clarifying simply means that a lot of times the learners themselves don't quite understand what each other is saying. And so they need some sort of step to acknowledge, okay, did you mean to say this? Right? And a lot of times this will solve some problems between learners because they're often talking past each other. One of them thinks they want to say this, the other one thinks that they want to say this, and they end up having not really getting at to what the real issue was. And so you can have them compare the score that they gave with the score that maybe you give, or you may not even choose to show them the score. You might just kind of let them think about it, right? It's up to you. I showed them the score just in case some of them were going 8 and 9. I would want to say, this is more like a 4 to me. It's okay, but you can do a lot better, and show them how, show them why. What they need to be doing. And that's important too, because they don't have the grounding for it. They need some examples. So next, identifying. So now the students need to learn how to be clear about what exactly it is they think is a problem. A lot of them don't do that. They'll give something like, I don't know what you're talking about. You need to explain this better. Well, what does that even mean, right? The other student doesn't even know what that means. So how can they? So you need to give them some instruction on that. Another thing you can work on with this is giving them some pragmatic skills too, because this peer review is interesting in that it's not a contrived situation. This is actually a authentic communication activity because they're really trying to tell each other something, right? If you're doing it right. And so when that happens, real emotions and real human interaction comes to play here. And so people can have their feelings hurt if they feel the other person is being too domineering or not being sensitive enough about it. So you want to give them it's a good opportunity to give them some pragmatic skills as well, right? Keep it positive, learn how to use some expressions. Because again, the feedback can be an opportunity for language practice itself, right? So you can integrate all sorts of things into this. Explaining. So this is just teaching students that they need to give some rationale for what they're doing instead of just saying what was wrong. This advice here, this explanation is not easy to understand. I can't grasp what you're trying to say about your weak point. We don't know why that's the case still. They're still saying they don't get it. So just giving them some simple explanation and some simple examples, okay? Show exactly what it was that you didn't get. Identify it, and then that will help the other student correct it and make it better. It's things that we do as teachers, but students don't quite grasp that yet. And then the final one, offering advice. This is pretty self-evident, right? So the student needs to be able to maybe help their partner, give them a hint, give them an example, right? And this is, again, a good place to show about pragmatics, softer language, right? Maybe you can show them, this is how you correct people. This is how you offer suggestions. This is how you offer advice. Because if we're all at the university here, then students are needing to move beyond just simple language understanding. They need to be able to use it correctly. They need to be able to use it in a real communicative context. So you can integrate a lot of different useful things about this. So I've talked very long and very fast, but at the very end, the students should also just get a chance to try it. Give them a chance to use the application and give some feedback on maybe something that you show them. I guess I'm pretty much out of time. I will put up my thing in the so thank you very much, everybody. I probably should have gone a little faster, but that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Zach, for that excellent presentation. Now, can I just ask everyone
Yes.
to unmute their mics and give a round of applause to Zach, please?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very
Okay,
much,
so,
Zach.
I'm going to try to load this file up very quickly, and then
Okay, would you like anyone to ask you some questions, Zach?
if we have time, that's fine. I'm also going to be
let's-
trying to hunt this down.
Yeah. So if anyone would like to turn on their mic and ask Zach a question or type a question into the chat, I can read that question to Zach while he's just trying to upload those files for everyone for their information.
This computer is not letting me see it. Oh man, this is okay. I think I'm getting closer. Okay, all right, now I'm getting it. This Zoom has got a different window.
Okay, Zach, a question from Alexis. How much time do you spend going over the different process of giving feedback?
Oh, that's going to depend on, again, how much time you have in the classroom. I can devote 1/2 class to it, so 45 minutes. But you may not even have that much. Okay, I found it.
Okay, so about half a class.
And it's uploading right now. But again, you might find that you have maybe a full class. That's if you're doing an academic writing class where you can really do it a lot. With one of my classes, it's just like 15 minutes where I do. I have also a presentations class that I teach, and it's more just taking some of the lighter points of it and just running through it. But even the priming activity itself can be extremely useful for students. Just doing it just a little bit can go a long way. So I've got the slides up here now. So again, I really blasted through that last part, but feel free to go back and read it a little closer. Hopefully it'll make a little more sense. Let's see, is there anybody else? Either by voice or by question. Is that okay? Well, anyway, I'll leave it to Andrew then to close us out.
If you want to continue, the conference has the Hangouts area. Now we're in room 11 at the moment, so I think there's a breakout room in Hangouts you can go to if you want to continue on. But there's also this. I encourage you to visit the SIGs and the topic discussion room. But again, thank you all for coming, and we have to close the room now, but thank you very much, Zach, for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary.
Thank you.
Okay.